Hey guys, Bharadwaj with Phone Arena here, and today we are going to compare two tablets, very similar looking, almost brothers, one can say, the Asus PhonePad and the Google Nexus 7 made by Asus. So, as you can see from this angle itself, they both look very much alike and of very much the same size and the dimensions. So let's compare them both in detail. But before that, you need to know some history about these devices. The PhonePad was launched at the Mobile World Congress, while the Google Nexus 7 was launched way back last year, but it recently released officially in India, and both these devices are made by Asus, as we said earlier. So these two devices retail at a very similar price range. This retails for 14,999 in the Indian Play Store for the 16 GB version, and this 15,999 in all the retail stores. So the basic difference between these two tablets is the calling facility on the Asus PhonePad. So basically, the PhonePad is the calling version of the Nexus 7. But what are the other differences and what are the other similarities? That's what we are going to take a look in the full in-depth comparison right away. So let's start with the design and the specifics about the dimensions. In terms of design, uh, as we said, both look almost the same from the front. Both have the same corners, both have the same kind of a bezel, and even the same kind of a display, would say, with the respect to the bezel dimensions and all the other dimensions. Over at the top, you can see that the Asus PhonePad has the earpiece here, which the Nexus 7 lacks. So heading on to the right side, you can see that the Nexus 7 has the power and the volume rocker, while the PhonePad has nothing. On the back, you can see that the PhonePad, made of metal, is decent looking with the color we have got here, which is champagne gold. The other one is the titanium gray. This is soft touch rubber plastic and is black. You can see the Nexus branding here. And since this is an Intel based tablet, you can see the Intel logo and the Asus logo here on the Nexus 7 and the Asus logo here on the PhonePad. Over on the left side of the PhonePad, you can see that the button arrangement is almost the same. In fact, it looks exactly the same as the right side of the Nexus 7, which is the power button and the volume rocker. Over at the top, we have the microphone on the PhonePad, and even on the Nexus 7 you have the microphone, which is very hard to see at first, but here is the microphone that makes the top of the both of these devices. And over at the bottom, you have the micro USB slot, another microphone on the PhonePad, and the 3.5 jack on the Nexus 7 as well as the PhonePad. So that makes up for the design and the hardware differences. And if you can notice, the glass on the PhonePad is a fingerprint magnet, while the Nexus 7 II is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but it's not so as bad as the Asus PhonePad. So let's talk about the elephant in the room then, which is the display. Both these displays are 7-inch 1280 by 800 16 by 10 displays. So these displays are IPS TFT panels, but as you can see, the viewing angles of the PhonePad are a little bit diminished and dimmed thanks to the increased air gap between the screen and the display. Unlike the Nexus 7, which is pretty good, even though it is the same display, thanks to the less air gap, you can almost see there is very less reflectivity on the Nexus 7 when compared to the Asus PhonePad, which has very high reflectivity. So coming back to the dimensions, as you notice, they look pretty much similar. And even in the dimensions, they are exactly the same. So both these are 10.4 millimeters thick, exactly the same again, and the weight is 340 grams. No differences in that. So they are exactly the same. So you can just assume that Asus pulled out some internals and changed them from the Nexus 7 and slapped an Asus logo on the front and the back and sent it out as the phone pad. So talking about internals, we have the phone pad here, which runs on an Intel processor, which is the Intel Z2420, the Lexington one. It was launched at CES, and here it is on a tablet, and this is the first Intel based tablet to run Android. While the Nexus 7 has the Tegra 3 processor, which is an NVIDIA processor, and it's a quad core chip, while the Intel one is a single core chip at 1.2 gigahertz and has only one core, while this is 4 cores. When coming to RAM and the GPU, both these devices have 1 gigabyte of RAM, and the GPU on the Tegra 3 is the GeForce low power GPU, while the one on the Intel is the PowerVR SGX 540. If I remember right, that was the GPU on the Samsung Galaxy S. So yeah, it's pretty old, but since this is pretty low end, we would expect that's why Intel went with that GPU for the Lexington SoC. So that's about the differences in the internals. Coming to the other aspects of the internals, this can do calling. So there is a SIM card slot here, and also additionally it has a micro SD card slot. So these are housed on the top. So this is plastic, which is otherwise metal here. Over here you can see the micro SIM slot here and the micro SD card slot. So that means that the phone pad can do calling, which is the USP of this device, and can accommodate extra storage too. So basically this is just a big phone, unlike the Nexus 7. So that's one of the major differences. And of course both these are 16 GB variants, and as I said earlier, the only differences are the micro SIM card slot and the micro SD card slot for expandable storage. So coming to the general performance of these two devices, we would say the phone pad could do a lot better. The Intel Lexington processor, it's okay, but as you can see, the general navigation is a bit laggy, and games too perform okay. Not too bad, but not too great. On the other hand, the Nexus 7 is running on Tegra 3, as we said, and it blazes through with stock software from Google, and of course a lot of optimized stuff for Tegra 3, which makes the gaming scene much better on the Nexus 7. With regards to the cameras though, that's the only puzzle missing in the hardware. Both these have 1.2 megapixels front facing cameras, and both these can do 720p of video calling. It was not enabled on the Nexus 7 at first, but there is a hack that enables 720p video calling on the Nexus 7. A difference though, on the back, the 3.2 megapixel camera on the Asus phone pad, while there is nothing of that sort on the Nexus 7. Arguably, you would not want to take photos with this camera, as it is very bad, to put it bluntly. But at least there is a rear-facing camera, because I see a lot of people taking photos with tablets, and this might be sufficient for them. So now coming to the software part of the devices, both run on Android of course, but since this is a Nexus device, it runs on the latest version of Android, which is Android 4.2.2, with various enhancements like quick toggles, lock screen widgets, user accounts, etc. While this runs on Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean, which is the most popular Jelly Bean built on most devices. But again, the difference lies in the software capabilities. The phone pad has capabilities for calling, messaging, and whatnot. It has custom UIs for things like these, which looks a bit ugly in our opinion, but still you get these capabilities on the phone pad, while you cannot on the Nexus 7. While the advantage is on the Nexus 7 is that you get all the updates instantly, and Nexus 7 obviously looks much better thanks to less fiddling with the widgets and the clock and whatever. As you can see here, Asus has done something with the UI with, for example, the widgets here, which frankly look a bit ugly, and of course the custom notification panel, which also looks a bit ugly. So that's about the main differences between the software. But before we forget, we have one more thing to show on the Asus PhonePad, which is much better in terms of functionality. You might have seen this on other tablets, and Asus has implemented its own version of that. So these are the mini apps that you get on the PhonePad. These are like overlays which you can move around and use the device when you are using these overlaid mini apps. There are very few options though. You have a inbuilt calculator, a browser, and you can move them anywhere you want and expand them anytime if you want. Otherwise, these already you might have seen them on Samsung devices. So that's about some of the advantages that the Asus UI gives you. And again, there are also some few tweaks with regards to the hardware parts of the Asus PhonePad. So you have a Asus Splendid, which is a display calibration tool which can change the color temperature and save different settings for the display. It might be nice to have these tweaks because the display is a bit on the lower side. It has very less brightness and definitely needs this for enhancing the display. So that's good. Otherwise, that's about it for the differences between the software of these two devices. So yeah, finally concluding, if you want a very Nexus 7 looking device that can make phone calls, then the PhonePad is for you. But again, you know what all the disadvantages and compromises you have to make when it comes to software. And of course hardware too, because the display is kind of inferior. The Nexus 7 on the other hand is the best Android tablet that you can get in a very low price range. For example, you get the 16 GB version for $14,999, which is a pretty damn good price for a Nexus tablet. So that's about it. That's the comparison for you. Do hit the like button if you like this video, and do subscribe to our channel for more videos like these. Keep checking out. Thanks for watching.